All right, we're finally talking about Troll Hunter. This is one of my favorite movies. Actually, I love this movie legitimately. So, spoiler alert. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen the movie, to watch the movie before you watch this. That being said, let's get right into it. So, Troll Hunter is a Norwegian found footage film. So, it is all in Norwegian, like the language and whatnot. There's hints of English here and there, or there are hints of English here and there. Go figure, I can't even speak it properly. But there are subtitles, so you're good for that. If you're good with subtitles, you're good. I would say even if you're not like a fan of subtitles, watch it anyway, because the movie's good enough that just do it. Just trust me on this one. Anyway, so the beginning intro part is something along the lines of like in 2003, or I can't remember what year, I think that's what it was, some tapes were handed in, and then they were looked at and confirmed to be authentic. So there you go. So that's the start of our found footage thing. They add that they've basically taken all the tapes and compiled them into a rough chronological order cut of everything that was filmed. So that's what's presented in this film. Essentially, you have these three college students, I believe, or high school students, one or the other. Students, let's just call them, doesn't matter what their age is at all, who are doing a project for their school on essentially the recent outbreaks of like bear attacks or whatnot. So on the radio, there are things, or there are confirmed killings of humans by bears. So there's a bear in the area and it's on the loose. So they start off by interviewing some of the local hunters who explain kind of how like bears are not usually a hunted animal, and only specific people can get a hunting license for bears, specifically for population control or situations like this where one bear in particular becomes more aggressive, whatever it is. And then they comment that there's another guy going around in an old Land Rover, and he is not a hunter. He's most likely a poacher. So that sparks our three heroes' interest. May as well get the names out of the way. So we have Thomas, who's kind of like the documentary face. So he's the one on film who's kind of explaining what's going on as it's going on. Then we have Johanna, who is the sound girl, and then we have Kalle, who's the camera guy. Anyway, there you go. Introductions. So they follow this gentleman who is assumed to be a poacher to a campground, and they go and they intercept him as he's heading from his vehicle to his trailer, and he basically tells them to frig off. They're like, "Can we ask you a couple questions?" He's like, "Get lost." So yeah, that's fun. Anyway, persistent as usual. They talk to the owner or the manager of the campground or whatever, and they say, yeah, he goes out basically all night and then comes in basically shortly after dawn and stays in his trailer until nightfall again and then goes out again. So that's kind of weird. Definitely suspicious, right? So I mean, if he's a poacher, I mean, it's not looking good for him concealing that fact. Anyway, needless to say, they basically wait up all day, and they finally see him leaving at night, and they just say, okay, we're gonna follow him. So they do. Scenery as they're driving is absolutely gorgeous. There are like different cut segments of like this Norwegian landscape going by, and man, what a beautiful country. Anyway, they end up losing him, unfortunately, so they turn back to the campground and they go check out his trailer, and there's time on the door and like some weird furry things. They can't tell what they are, and they look inside the trailer with like night vision, because they have like a night vision camera, so they're set basically, right? They're ready to roll. And yeah, it's really strange. Again, there's like long furry things hanging in there, and like it's kind of a mess. Anyway, he comes back, and the next day the next night they follow him, or I can't speak English. The next day they follow him. He leaves the campground and he's heading like across the country. He takes like a ferry and whatnot. And on this ferry, they see him up on the deck and they're like, okay, now's our chance. Let's go talk to him. He can't run off right now. So he's on a ferry. Where is he going to go? So Thomas approaches them and says, listen, we want to ask you a few questions. He's like, what the hell do you want? He's like, are you a poacher? He's like, leave me the hell alone, dude. Like, go away. And like, doesn't answer any of his questions. Fair enough. Ferry docks. They continue following him to the next campground. They almost miss him leaving, but they end up following him after dark again down not a highway, it's like a road with like, it's like a dirt road, I think, or something like that. There's a split and they go one way and they park like off in the distance so he can't see their lights or whatever, and they walk down the road because they see the tracks and they see his Land Rover pulled onto the side. They're like, okay, so he's here. Let's find this guy and see what the hell he's up to. And they do that. They follow basically where he would have went into the forest. And they're looking around and they're not seeing anything. And they hear some weird noises coming from over a small hill. And then they see flashes of light from behind the hill, and like it's lighting up the trees are all backlit, and it's a cool scene. And they hear footsteps, and slowly out of the darkness appears Hans, who is the poacher, who stops, kind of shocked that they're following him, just looks at them and yells, "Troll!" It's like, what? Anyway, they all run because this guy's panicking. Like, obviously no one believes in trolls, but maybe it's the bear. Like, something's there. They bolt. They get back to his vehicle. They end up being chased by this thing, I should say, sorry. They're chased by this thing, and it, like... Their car is, like, totaled. Like, the student's car is completely totaled, and the wheels are destroyed. The tires are completely ripped off, and the vehicle's smashed and on its side. And they're like, Hans, do you know anything about this? And he's like, yeah, I might know something about it. And they're like, if you know what happened to my car, you have to tell me. Like, this is ridiculous. And basically he kind of, they call him out. He says, okay, I'll drive you back to the town or whatever, because I mean, I'm not going to leave you stranded out here. He's like, as much as he wants to protect whatever he's doing, he's not going to leave them out in the middle of the wilderness with whatever kind of wild creature. Meanwhile, in this chase, it turns out that Thomas was bitten by something, and his shoulder's all bloodied and whatnot. And Hans patches him up, puts like disinfectant, and then sticks a needle in him. And Tom's like, "Ah, what the hell was that?" And he's like, "Tetanus shot." And he's like, "Oh, it's only supposed to hurt really bad." I've never had one, but anyway. So that's fun. So they're driving, and they end up saying, like, "Did you say troll? Like, did you legitimately say troll?" And he's like, "Listen, you want me to admit trolls exist on camera? Is that what you're after?" Like, anyway, long story short, they eventually, he caves, and he's like, "Listen, okay, if you want to film me killing what bit you, that's fine. You can come along, but you have to listen to what I do, and you have to agree to do what I tell you to do." And they're like, "Okay, yeah. Like, we want to..." This is big. They want to see what's going on. They're still under the assumption that it's a bear or whatever, right? Anyway. So they go and they find this creature, and there's another whole scene of it through the trees and everything, and they lure it out to a field, and finally they see that it actually legitimately is a troll. It's a species called a tosser lad, they find out later, and it has 3 heads on it with big noses and whatever, and it's very, very big, like the size of the height of a tree, essentially. But Hans is prepared for it. He has a light fixture on the top of his vehicle, so as soon as the troll comes out, he like sings a hymn or a prayer or something, and then flashes the light on his troll. And within seconds, the troll turns to stone. So you got like this big stone thing in the shape of a troll. And of course, the 3 students are like, "Wow, they actually exist. What the hell? This is huge." And we got it on film, and they're all celebrating and whatnot. And Hans is casually figuring, well, I gotta get rid of the evidence, right? So he takes a sledgehammer, knocks out one of the legs, whole thing collapses, and then into the day they show him like jackhammering pieces, and then they put a tarp and set up explosions to basically reduce the remains of this troll into gravel, essentially, get rid of any trace of it. So they're convinced trolls exist, and they want to follow him along. He says, yeah, sure, okay, so let's do this. They run into this guy Finn, who runs like the national wildlife thing, who starts giving Hans shit for having people with cameras filming him. Like, what are you doing? This is like top secret stuff. And I mean, he's tries to attempt to get the camera and the tapes, and he's not successful because there's more of them than him. So whatever. That happens. And just as they're kind of like squabbling, this van pulls up, and it's like Piotr's Polish paint service or whatever. And this Polish guy comes out in very broken English, and it's he's like the best character. I don't even care. Anyway, he was hired by Finn to bring in a Norwegian bear to plant so that people see that there was a bear in the area that was killed. And they have like these little bear track makers and stuff that they're doing in the snow and whatnot. And they interview the Polish guy who brought the bear, and he's like, in Poland we don't ask questions. Why problem make if you don't problem have, you do not want to have, or something like that. It was like the best line ever. Anyway, turns out it's a Russian bear, and the guy's like, yeah, this is Russian. He's like, same thing, he's okay. He's like, no, this is Norway, they're different species. Anyway, that puts Finn in a predicament, and later he has to explain to people that a Russian bear had wandered into the area, which is not really likely, but yeah, there were reports of like sheep farmers, like their sheep being slaughtered and whatnot, and they tracked like down remnants to like a bridge in the area, and there's Finn trying to explain that, yeah, this is a Russian bear, and the reporters are even kind of like, is this normal behavior for bears? Like, there's food here. And he's like, yeah, in Russia, due to the harsh weather or whatever, they store their food just like squirrels, and he's doing his best to cover it up, but I mean, anyway, needless to say, Hans is like, okay, well, we got to come back here after dark, because this is clearly where the thing's hiding, or hanging out, or whatever. So they do. They come back, and he gets off the phone with someone who ends up being a veterinarian. Yeah, language, right? Between the broken English, Polish guy, and all the Norwegian, maybe my brain is a little messed up with language. Anyway, so he gets off the phone with this veterinarian, and she's basically saying, like, yeah, you gotta bring me a blood sample from this troll. And he's like, oh, alright. So they come back at night, and they put some goats on the bridge. Nice little nod to the Three Billy Goats gruff or whatever, because there's three on the bridge, and you know the story, obviously. Yeah, and they're waiting, and he's looking through night vision off in the distance, and he sees it, and he says, okay, well, we gotta get into action here. I need to sample. We gotta get this troll out so I can do that. He has this giant ass syringe that's like metal and squeaking when you like do the thing, because it's just, yeah. I mean, it's a troll. I guess you need a lot of blood, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, it shows the troll grabbing one of the goats off of the thing and biting it, and is still dying, and he like smashes it into a rock and then eats it. Does his troll thing with that. Poor goatie. But they cut to the group at the start of the bridge, and Hans in like a full suit of armor with this syringe, and he's like, alright, well, let's do this. And he has a bucket of blood, which oh, I forgot to mention, he asked everyone right away, like, are any of you Christian? Do you believe in God or Jesus? And they're like, no. And then he's like, okay. And he doesn't explain why. Anyway, it turns out that like trolls can like smell Christian blood or something, and they're attracted to it or whatever. So that's a thing. A lot of this movie, like, they explain things about trolls like scientifically. There's no real explanation for the Christian blood thing, though. I guess they're doing a mix of science and folklore, which is kind of cool. Anyway, throws this bucket of blood on top of the bridge, and that gets the troll's attention. So troll hops up. Hans attempts to sneak around him because the troll's vision is like not very great apparently. Goes mostly on smell, and he's in a suit of armor and he has troll stench and everything, so he's essentially hidden. But the troll does notice him and just swats him, and his body crumples and lies like lifeless on the bridge, and the the troll looks around, stomps a bit. The goats are already gone, they had taken them back, the remaining ones. Troll slips back onto the bridge, and the three run up and they're like, oh my god, Hans, are you okay? Are you okay? He's not moving. Oh my god. And finally hear him groan, oh fuck. Get me the syringe. And he ever the trooper, they help him up, and he goes under the bridge and gets his sample, but he ends up having to flash light at this troll. This one, unlike the previous troll, explodes instead of turning into stone. So, okay, that's interesting. Anyway, they travel and they go see this veterinarian friend of Hans. May or may not be more than a friend, which is alluded to very briefly. But anyway, they give her the blood sample, and she's like, "Oh, there aren't enough red blood cells. This is weird. I'll need a couple days to analyze it, and I'll get back to you." He's like, "All right, that's fine." We got more trolls to track down anyway, so they do that. Oh yeah, the species of the bridge troll or whatever. It only had one arm too. I guess maybe it lost one in a battle or something. Whatever. The design of all the trolls is very cool, I have to say. It's, I guess, sort of based on some designs from like folklore, but like way cooler. Like they even go to a point of saying like before they see the first troll, they're like, okay, what happens if a troll wants to get into like an eating contest with you? And Hans is just like, eating contest? You dumb? Like, that's, trolls aren't like they are in the fairy tales. They're real animals. Like, anyway, so that's fine. They leave the blood sample. Thomas gets a little bit cleaned up because he's splattered with like troll explosion. That sounded really bad. And they go to the next area. So they interview some farmers who are under the impression that there was a tornado that came through and destroyed some of the trees and whatnot. And Hans can tell right away, like, yeah, a couple trolls came through here for sure. So we have to come back here after dark. Which they do. They go off into the woods and they find an old mine. And they head into the mine, and there are no trolls there because it's night, so they're out doing their troll things, whatever important troll business they have to do that day. Eat rocks or whatever. Yeah, because apparently trolls eat rocks too. They eat animals, they eat rocks, they eat trees. Basically, they eat anything that's like organic. So, or wait, are rocks organic or they I don't know. Anyway, they eat natural things. So, you know, animals, rocks, plants, whatever, they eat that stuff. And they like to chew on rubber too, apparently, because there's a scene where he puts a tire under a bridge, and then later they check to see if the troll's been there by looking at an old tire, and it hasn't been chewed on, so clearly the troll hasn't been there. Anyway, whatever. They go into this mine shaft. He does like a troll call. He pulls out his pocket and blows into it, and there's no response. He's like, all right, we're good. Let's go investigate and see what we're dealing with. They go in and they see, okay, there's like rudimentary beds made, stuff like that. So that's fine, but the trolls aren't there, so let's leave before they come back. Unfortunately, as they're leaving, the trolls come back. And they're like, ah, shit. We can't get out of the cave right now. They're coming right through the entrance. So they go deeper into the cave, and they find like a little hollowed, or into the mine, sorry. They find like a little hollowed out area that they hide in. Right now, Kalle is freaking out the most out of everyone, and he's asking like, give me the troll stench, and they give it to him, and he's just rubbing it all over himself. Eventually he confesses that he's Christian, so that's not great. As the troll stench wears off and there's none left, they get a whiff of him essentially and wake up. Yeah, so they make a run for it, and unfortunately for Kalle, he does not make it. He is grabbed, he drops the camera, you hear him basically screaming and crunching, and that's the end of him. But it's daylight out, so the trolls can't really chase the others out of the cave. So when they go back in the cave, they grab the camera and they have a little moment outside. Thomas is like messed up, clearly, because like, that's his buddy, right? And Joanna's all silent and everything. Hans is kind of like, all right, well, I mean, we gotta get going. Just know it's part of the job, right? I mean, people die, but these two are obviously shaken. It's their friend or whatever, but they agree. They say, okay, we have to finish this documentary. It is what it is. The ones in the mountain, it's a species called mountain kings, by the way. Anyway, as they go further north, what it looks like further north anyway, there's like snow now on the ground, and it looks like tundra and stuff, and they drive under some power lines, and was this scene before or after? I can't remember. No, it was before, so I missed this whole scene. So anyway, they go up. No, it was after. Oh, my brain. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a scene where they are up north and they're driving under these power lines, and Hans explains basically that, you know, they look like regular power lines, but essentially they're just an electric fence to keep the larger trolls in the mountainous area there so that they don't get out and they don't, you know, ravage villages and get seen by people. So that's fun. And then they come across like an entire forested area that's completely raised to the ground. And he's like, wow. Even Hans is like, I have never seen this before. This has to be a Jotnar, which is a species of troll that is like kaiju size almost. So yeah, you got a kaiju troll running around. That's fun. And they head to the power station to see like how the hell did it get out. They actually head into the troll territory. So this is a first for them also, because usually they just... Hans had explained earlier in the movie that his job is to basically quell any trolls that leave their territory. So whether they're causing damage to people's property or they're at risk of being seen and discovered by people, those are the ones that he's essentially hired to take out. But it's not all glamorous either, because apparently in the 70s there was like an entire territory of mountain trolls that they wanted to build a highway tunnel through that area, and he was sent in to basically genocide them. So he was saying, yeah, like pregnant females and like young ones and babies and fathers, like everything, he just had to exterminate them to do this. And he's like, yeah, I'm not a hero, trust me. I hate this shitty job, the pay's crap, there's no benefits, and I have to do things like this. So he's not happy. And that's essentially why he's letting them follow along and film him, because he's sick of it. He's like, yeah, let's just make it public already. It's ridiculous. So anyway, oh shit, yeah, they got a new camera person too, by the way. What was her name? Malika, I think. And right away, Thomas asks her, like, are you Christian? Do you believe in God and Jesus? And she's like, I'm Muslim. And he's like, oh, okay, that's good. And he turns to Hans, he's like, Muslim, that's okay, right? Hans pauses, he's like, I honestly have no idea. Let's see what happens. So that's kind of hilarious. Turns out that she had experience like filming like lions and stuff in Africa and whatever, so she's used to dangerous creatures, although she doesn't know that trolls exist. So anyway, that being said, they do the power grid thing, and they get a remote cabin out in the tundra-y area, or the mountain-y area, or whatever it is. I'm not sure. I think it's called Dover or Dovre or something like that. I'm not familiar with Norway's regions, but I think it was Dovre. So I don't know if that's north or not. But anyway, there are mountains. That's all you need to know. So they are in this cabin and they're waiting, and night falls and still nothing, and it's getting later and later and then earlier as the next day comes, and Hans is like, okay, there's like an hour left of sunlight. I don't know if this is happening. And then just then, a flock of birds like flies over, like a huge swarm of birds flies over. So okay, something's coming, clearly. And lo and behold, they look out the window, and between two mountains you see this massive troll walking out, and he's like angry. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a big one. I have my UV spotlight on the top of the truck here. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I have to give it a shot. So let's see what we can do. Anyway, phone rings. Thomas answers. It's Hans' phone, and Thomas answers. Hello. He's like, he's kind of busy right now, but rabies? And he gives the phone to Hans, and Hans is talking to her, and he's like, yeah, well, that explains it. So apparently this big one has rabies, and he's been giving it to all the smaller ones. So like the tosser lad, the Ringelfinch, those were infected by this big Jotner. So this is like the source of the troll rabies. And then he looks at Thomas, and he's like, yeah, you would have it too now. And Thomas is like, no, dogs get rabies. And like, yeah, people get rabies too. He's like, okay, we gotta go to the hospital now. And he's like, no, we have to take this troll out first. He's like, no, I don't care. Anyway, lo and behold, they go confront the troll because priorities, right? Yeah, throughout the movie too, Thomas is getting like waves of dizziness and weakness due to what we now know is rabies is messing him up, and his shoulder is seriously hurt, and it's spreading through him clearly. Anyway, they mount up the truck. They put on like armored spikes and stuff on it. I mean, this thing's huge. I don't know what it's going to do, but like they have to do everything they can, right? Anyway, he takes the tarp off. There's a giant UV spotlight on the roof, and they wait at the cabin, and he goes and sets up in the path of where this monster troll's going and starts flashing this UV light at it, and the thing's roaring and staggering back, and it's too big to take out, as quickly as the other ones, but it's clearly slowing it or weakening it or hurting it or something, because it stops to take a breather essentially, and he drives off and picks up the group again, and he says, okay, so... Or no, that's what happens. His light, the big light, the power cuts out. And it turns out one of his batteries was disconnected. But this thing is stunned a little bit right now from the flashing and whatnot. So he has enough time to sort of get away and quickly repair it. And the other ones get into the vehicle and they go. And this giant-ass troll starts chasing them as they're driving down the highway. And it's a fair distance away or whatever, but it's gaining on them slowly. And they see a man on the side of the road, and he's panicking, and he's like, I don't know what he was, I guess he was camping out there maybe or something, and they pick him up, and he's like horrified seeing this massive troll. So they pick him up, and they drive, and the thing is chasing them. It's catching up quickly now. Takes a swat at the Land Rover, which is knocked over and flipped on its side, and the sound equipment is all damaged because when it cuts back to the camera, it's like very muffled or muted sound, kind of like you can hear, but it's distorted. So obviously the boom mic is destroyed. Anyway, you see Hans kind of preparing himself to go finish the job, and he's got like all this equipment. And the Jotnar is standing in this big field, and it's just screaming. Like, I don't know, it's like it got hit by a lot of UV, so it's probably in pain and out of breath, and that chase probably wore it down too. Like Hans even said, like, yeah, we can take it out probably, but we have to wear it down, hence the chase. He basically wanted to wear it out. Anyway, it knocked over the car, so I guess it assumes that the car is an animal and that the car stopped moving, so therefore it's dead. So it's just sort of taking a breather and screaming, and it's like super loud that it's distorting the audio, which was very well done. I thought that was cool. Anyway, it turns out Hans has one of his pieces of equipment is like a UV bazooka, so I don't know how that works, but he shoots something and it impacts the troll, and like a flash of light comes out of it, and the troll calcifies and crumbles right in front of him, and that's the end of that. And they're like, oh my god, it's finally done. The screaming has stopped, because they've been screaming for like a long time, and their ears are probably ringing, so they're like ecstatic about that. They start heading down the road, and because Hans had told them to, like, once this is done, you just keep going down that road, it'll lead you to a town or whatever. So that's what they do, and they see vans coming, and the gentleman that they picked up is with them too still. They all survived the crash, thankfully. Anyway, they realize, oh shit, that's Finn's vehicle, right? And his men. So they're intercepted. Joanna grabs Malika's camera and just takes off with it. She's like, what are you doing? And anyway, Thomas has some tapes too, and they're running, and Joanna slips and they grab her, and I guess they got Malika and the other dude too, and Thomas runs through this field towards another stretch of highway, and you see a semi-truck coming, and you hear the horns blare, and then the film cuts out, and then it says this is where the film ended, basically, and there's been no trace of these students since. If you have any information, contact the Norwegian whatever board of missing persons or something like that. All official sounding. They say that though the government has not officially released any statements about the existence of trolls, there was one interview where the Prime Minister of Norway made a slip confirming trolls exist, and they show a clip that was like a legitimate news clip of the real actual Prime Minister at the time saying trolls exist. I read somewhere that it was about like a troll peninsula or something that he was referring to, but the way they took it and put it in the movie, it really sounded like he was just saying it like it was common knowledge. And you got Finn sitting beside him as soon as he says troll exists, he's like, shit. But then it goes to say that apparently no one understood what he actually meant. But yeah, that's the movie. So, oh yeah, they did, some of the veterinarian was explaining why they like turn to stone and whatnot, is apparently their bodies can't convert vitamin D into like usefulness. So when the sun hits them, it expands the blood in their veins or something, and it causes them to explode. And they're like, okay, but like we saw the first troll and it turned to stone. She's like, yeah, the older trolls, their veins are too constricted, and I guess they're too powerful and whatnot, so like it calcifies right in their bones, and basically their bones calcify, and the calcium expands outward, turning them to stone. And apparently it's like, she has like a moment of silence. She's like, I wish they didn't have to experience such pain, because apparently, though it's only a couple seconds for it to happen, it's like severely traumatic for them. So that's harsh. Anyway, that's the movie. I love this movie. It's one of my movies I come back to quite regularly, actually. So obviously I highly recommend it. I'm gonna give it a 9.5. 9.6. We're going 9.6 because it is fantastic for what it is. Like, as far as found footage goes, this is probably my favorite found footage movie that I've seen that I can think of at the moment. As far as foreign films go, other than like Godzilla, because I'm kind of like a Godzilla nerd. As far as foreign films go, this is probably my favorite. It's just so good. And you get to look at beautiful Norwegian scenery, and the whole concept of trolls is a cool idea. Like, it's so localized to like the Scandinavian and Nordic countries. I mean, they have them in Iceland too, so not just Scandinavia, but like the Nordic countries. So it's something you don't hear about a lot outside of those countries. It's other than like, the Trolls movies with like the happy little cartoon trolls and stuff, which were confirmed by Hans, nothing like real trolls. So, yeah, 9.6. Absolutely check this out. I don't know what it's streaming on. I just own it on DVD, so I watch that. But find it. If you can find a copy of it, buy it. It's worth it. You'll come back to it. I hope, anyway. If subtitles really throw you off, I would say at least watch it once and make your decision before you just dismiss it for having subtitles. That's all I have to say about that. Troll Hunter, fantastic. 9.6. Absolutely, highly recommended by myself. Go check it out. Bye-bye.